Petr Aven's story begins in Moscow, 1955. Born into a family of academics, his childhood was marked not by wealth or privilege, but by the intellectual atmosphere of Soviet life. His father was a noted computer scientist, while his mother came from a family of Latvian intellectuals. Aven's upbringing was steeped in ideas and education, setting him on a path that would combine brains with ambition in the turbulent years to come. From a young age, Aven excelled academically. He studied at Moscow State University, where he specialized in economics. His interest in international trade, finance, and policy made him stand out in a Soviet system that often discouraged independent thinking. By the early 1980s, Aven was working as a researcher at the Institute for Systems Analysis, part of the Russian Academy of Sciences. In the quiet world of Soviet academia, he studied global markets and international economics, while behind the Iron Curtain, the system he lived in was beginning to crumble. The fall of the Soviet Union was the pivotal turning point. For Aven, this collapse was not just a national catastrophe, it was also an unprecedented opportunity. As state systems fell apart, as shortages swept the country, and as old institutions lost power, a new generation of ambitious men began building fortunes out of chaos. Aven would become one of them. In the early 1990s, he stepped into government. He became Minister of Foreign Economic Relations under President Boris Yeltsin, a key position at a time when Russia was desperate to open itself to the global economy. Imagine the task: a nation crumbling, hyperinflation raging, and the country needing to establish trade with the West after decades of isolation. Aven was in the middle of it. He negotiated deals, arranged trade frameworks, and helped steer Russia into the emerging capitalist world. But Aven was more than a bureaucrat. He had sharp instincts for business. He left government in the mid-1990s, entering the private sector with a focus on banking. This was the moment when Russia's oligarch class began to form. Those with connections, courage, and vision, those willing to navigate the treacherous waters of post-Soviet capitalism, stood to gain fortunes. It was during this period that Petr Aven connected with Mikhail Fridman, another rising titan of Russian business. Together, they would shape one of Russia's most powerful financial empires, Alfa Group. Alfa Bank, the jewel of the group, became Russia's largest private bank. While state banks often moved sluggishly or remained tied to political structures, Alfa prided itself on professionalism, innovation, and aggressive expansion. Aven, serving as president of Alfa Bank for decades, brought credibility and strategic direction. He had international connections, intellectual pedigree, and a polished demeanor that reassured foreign investors. Fridman brought deal-making prowess and bold entrepreneurial energy. Together, they built Alfa into a powerhouse. Alfa's rise mirrored Russia's turbulent transformation. During the 1998 financial crisis, when much of the Russian banking sector collapsed, Alfa managed to survive and even strengthen its position. Its survival owed much to calculated risk-taking and to Aven's careful navigation of relationships with both the Kremlin and Western financiers. This was not an easy balance. In Russia, no big business could exist without political connections. Aven's time in government and his role as a bridge between Russia and the West gave Alfa an edge. By the 2000s, Alfa Group had grown into far more than a bank. It expanded into oil through TNK-BP, a joint venture with British Petroleum. This deal, struck in 2003, was one of the largest foreign investments in Russia's history. For Aven and his partners, it was a masterstroke. Western capital poured in, and Russia's vast natural resources generated immense profits. But as with many oligarchs, success came with controversy. The Russian state, under Vladimir Putin, was asserting more control over strategic industries like oil and gas. TNK-BP became a battleground between Russian shareholders and BP executives, with conflicts spilling into the open. Though eventually resolved, the disputes highlighted the fragile balance between private wealth and state power in Russia. Meanwhile, Alfa Bank thrived as a financial institution for Russia's elite and for international investors looking to navigate Russian markets. Aven, with his fluent English, his academic background, and his air of refinement, often served as the public face of the group abroad. He became not just a banker, but an image of Russian capitalism, attempting to present itself respectably to the world. By this time, Aven was a billionaire many times over. Forbes estimated his fortune in the billions, built on banking, oil, and diversified investments. He invested in art, building one of the largest private collections of Russian paintings. He supported cultural institutions, museums, and philanthropic causes. To admirers, Aven was a sophisticated oligarch, a man of culture as well as commerce. To critics, he was part of the same system of crony capitalism that allowed a few men to amass vast fortunes while millions of Russians struggled. The 2010s brought new challenges. Western governments, increasingly wary of Russia's political direction, scrutinized the oligarchs. Aven's proximity to the Kremlin, real or perceived, made him a figure of interest. After Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, sanctions were imposed on many Russian business leaders. At first, Aven avoided direct targeting. But the 2022 invasion of Ukraine changed everything. In the wake of the invasion, Western countries unleashed sweeping sanctions against Russia's financial elite. Petr Aven was among those sanctioned by the European Union, the UK, and others. Assets were frozen, bank accounts blocked, and his ability to travel and conduct business in the West severely restricted. For a man whose career had relied so heavily on bridging Russia and the international financial system, this was a devastating blow. Suddenly, the cultivated image of Aven as an international businessman and art patron collided with the harsh reality of geopolitical conflict. His name appeared in headlines not for banking achievements, but for being sanctioned as one of Russia's powerful oligarchs. He denied wrongdoing, insisted he was not close to the Kremlin, and challenged the sanctions in court. Yet the stain remained. Even as his legal battles unfolded, his personal life attracted attention. Known as private and understated, Aven occasionally appeared at cultural events, always impeccably dressed, exuding the air of a man who straddled two worlds, the refined halls of European art and the rough, unpredictable landscape of Russian business. Today, Petr Aven's story remains unfinished. His wealth, once celebrated, is entangled in the broader drama of Russia's confrontation with the West. His businesses, once global, are increasingly confined by sanctions and political realities. For some, he represents the quintessential oligarch, intelligent, ambitious, but ultimately bound to a system where politics and business are inseparable. For others, he is a man caught in forces beyond his control, punished not for his actions, but for his nationality and associations. What cannot be denied is the scale of his journey. From a Soviet academic researching trade policy, to a government minister opening Russia to the world, to the president of its largest private bank, Petr Aven embodies the tumult of Russia's modern history. His fortune, his controversies, and his place in the story of Russian capitalism make him a figure of enduring intrigue. And so the question remains, is Petr Aven the polished face of Russian business success, or a symbol of the compromises and connections that define the oligarch era? His life, like the story of modern Russia itself, resists simple answers. What is certain is that Petr Aven's name will remain tied to the drama of wealth, power, and politics for years to come.